Have jihadists turned to a women and children first strategy? 3 French women at the heart of a failed plot to blow up a car filled with gas canisters that was discovered in Paris's Latin Quarter right near Notre-Dame Cathedral. They've now been formally charged over the plot and for the stabbing assaults on arresting officers. What drove them to radicalization? What's the role of women within radical groups? The Paris prosecutor says the failed plotters had links to other recent attacks and had answered the call to arms issued over the encrypted social network site Telegram from somewhere in Syria or Iraq. Calls also heard by a 15-year-old boy from the Paris area detained for pledging to carry out knife attacks. What does it all say about the relative strength or weakness of ISIS in France and in Europe? Today in the France 24 debate, we're focusing on women and radicalization. And with us, France24.com's Lila Jacinto. Welcome back to the show. From London, Nikita Malik, senior researcher at the Quilliam Foundation, which is all about studying how you go about counter-radicalization. You're also a member of the Alliance of Women Against Radicalization and Extremism Aware. Thank you for being with us. We're also joined from Beirut by Dalia Ghanem-Yazbek, visiting scholar at the Carnegie Middle East Center. Thank you for being with us. The France 24 debate, where you can join the conversation, and you have on Facebook and Twitter the hashtag F24Debate. 3 women now under formal investigation, the youngest 19, the daughter of the owner of that car that was found near Notre Dame, also in custody, the male companion of one of the 3. They'd answered the call of a 29-year-old Frenchman who'd gone to Syria and Iraq. Anka Ula has more.
A 29-year-old Frenchman who lives somewhere in Iraq or Syria. Rashid K. has been in the shadows of a number of attacks on French soil over the past few months. He manages 2 channels on the app Telegram, an encrypted messaging service favored by the Islamic State group because of its end-to-end encryption that's nearly impossible to trace. On Saturday, a 15-year-old, already on house arrest in Paris's 12th district, was taken into police custody. He was suspected of preparing imminent violent action and had just been in contact with Rashid K. on Telegram. The French jihadist has been very vocal on social media, posting a celebration video after the car attack in Nice, calling French people criminals. Through Telegram, he was in contact with other attackers, one of 2 men who killed an 85-year-old priest in Normandy, and the man who stabbed 2 police officers to death in a Paris suburb. Recently, he broadcast this provocation.
Fill the vehicle with gas canisters, spray them with gasoline, park in high-traffic areas, boom.
Through this last message, Rashid K. reached 3 women arrested on Thursday in Paris, after gas canisters were found in their car parked outside Notre Dame. One of the suspects, Ornella G., admitted her involvement and explained why the operation failed. She fled the scene when she saw a man she took for a police officer. 5 other people are in police custody following this most recent attack attempt, the latest orchestrated by the French jihadist Rashid K.
Reactions on the hashtag F24Debate. Marvin saying women are now the new tools of terrorism. Terrorists have achieved their aim to a capital agenda in every nation. Let me begin with you, Lila Jacinto, because the story of this 29-year-old out of Syria and Iraq, when you see Marvin there talking about women being the tools of terrorism, is it the guy in Iraq and Syria calling the shots, or are these women who, of their free will, are going for it? You know, who's calling the shots, basically?
I think remember, this is an ISIS phenomenon. Before this, the precursor has been Al-Qaeda, and there are several other jihadist groups. With the ISIS phenomenon, it really looks like the women are really going off their own will and violation. They get radicalized online, and there is a lot of propaganda geared towards luring women into Syria and Iraq. But what is really different about this, the gas cylinder plot, the Notre Dame plot, is that women are being taken an active role in actually being the attackers, as opposed to playing a role as propagandists or what I call incubators of the next generation. Because even ISIS in Syria, in Raqqa, the propaganda that they put out for women always, and these by the way are put out by women in Syria, constantly stress that women in the so-called caliphate have to play a sedentary role. They are mothers and sisters of the jihad, and they're constantly warning Western women that life here is going to be hard and don't expect to be on the battlefield. So my understanding is that this is a particularly French phenomenon. These are French citizens, don't forget, who have taken it upon themselves to actually conduct the attack. They are responding, of course, broadly to ISIS calls for everybody to take up whatever, from kitchen knives to anything, to attack the so-called infidels. But the prime call for this was another Frenchman, Rashid K, as we saw. So there is a particular element of being very French about this, because even though there have been wives of Al-Qaeda militants, none of them actually were willing to be martyred for the cause.
Okay, so this is interesting. Let me put it to you, Dalia Ghanem Yazbek. You heard Leila there saying the gender is one thing, but the other thing is here it's French people talking to other French people.
Sorry, would you mind repeating the question?
I'm saying, is this specifically a case where it is French people talking to other French people?
Yes. This is the case where it is French, indeed, people talking to French people. But, I think it is very important to keep in mind something. This is not a new phenomena. Women has been participating in political violence in general and in jihadist violence in particular for a while. This is not new. There is a misconception and misunderstanding about female militancy in general and female Islamist militancy in particular. Women has been used in several conflicts around the world. In Palestine, Al-Hamas used them. Al-Aqsa Brigade used them. In Algeria during the 90s, the GIA also used female for radicalization purposes. So this is not a new phenomena. And actually the data showed that actually, women kill 4 times more people. Women terrorists, of course, kill 4 times more people than their male counterparts, because they can have easily access to the target and because there is a less level of scrutiny toward them. So we should really keep that in mind where we are dealing with that. Why? Because this misconception leads us to not understanding the phenomena and then not understanding their motivation. Today, women join jihadist groups such as IS or the Islamic State because they have a different set of motivation that is as diverse and as different as their male counterparts.
Diverse such as what? What are the main reasons?
Well, in my study, I studied their social media, but also I draw on several cases, notably the Algerian case in the 90s. And I can say that there is a different set of cases. And of course, one should keep in mind that profiling is very hard, not to say impossible, because every life story is unique and every individual is unique. Yet there is some commonalities between these women. There is, of course, the religious ideology. Many of these women have a belief that their deen or their religion is not completed except if they go to IS-held territories or if they join the group and they perpetrate an attack in the name of the group. So they do believe that in the name, they want, in short, they want to raise the banner of Islam and to glorify the name of God on earth. So they do join IS in that purpose, and they do believe in their cause. Of course, this is not the only motivation. There is more important motivation for me because, you know, it is very hard for us as a researcher and as scholar to quantify, you know, the religious motivation, because there is a difference between religious motivation and also the religious justification. So the other motive is the desire to live in a pure society or in a perfect society. You know, IS has been very good at portraying and marketing itself as being a society in which there is, you know, equity, social justice, no discrimination, no racism, and so on and so forth. And, you know, there is this belief among these women, but also among these men, that they are joining a society, a community where everything is perfect and where sisterhood and brotherhood is stronger than blood ties. And, you know, social experiment showed and sociology showed how the group is very important in that regard. Once they join the group, they have a feeling that they constitute a great community, an invincible community, and the person stop being I to become a we, and this is what we call the we feeling, and the person is born again. So this is one of the most important motive. Of course, to that you can add, you know, that there is this image about IS as not being an organization, but as being a state that is capable of providing its followers with a raison d'être, but also with professional opportunities, with equity, and so on and so forth. Right. You cannot imagine, for instance, you know, the pictures of abundance and of wealth that you can find on social media, such as Twitter and Facebook, that, you know, these women also help in displaying. So I think this is an important factor that is more important than the religious motivation.
Willingness to belong to a group. Investigators, let's look on one specific case. Investigators say one of the three arrested south of Paris last Thursday was promised in marriage to the man who murdered a police couple in the western Paris suburb of Magnanville back in June, then immediately after to one of the two assailants who murdered an elderly priest in Normandy in the town of Saint-Étienne-du-Rouvray. According to newspaper Var Matin, she's a 23-year-old native of the French Riviera who converted to Islam last year. Back in March, her mother told the newspaper that she only learned of her daughter's radicalization after she'd been arrested in Turkey as she attempted to go to Syria. And she said, Sarah is like all young women her age. At 22, she shares the joys and suffering of a generation in search of its bearings. I learned things after she left for Turkey. During this troubled period, she lived a duality. I suppose a dual life is what she means. My daughter no longer knew which way she would tip. Nikita Malik, what's your reaction to the words of the mother of one of those three arrested?
Yes, I'm very glad that you mentioned families, because families, either in the de-radicalization process or in understanding the factors of radicalization, are key to this. And that is part of the work we do under AWARE. However, I'd just like to make a few comments. The first is the idea that this is a French phenomenon. I don't think this is a French phenomenon. I think this is a case of women being utilized by men. Now, when we examine the behavior of women in the Islamic State, we cannot do it in isolation without looking at men. Precisely as what you said before, this idea of marriage. Marriage is incredibly important to these women. Often they are doing revenge attacks for people in their families, brothers, husbands, or they're being goaded, or they're playing supporting roles. But essentially what they are relationship nodes in a much larger network. Information can be transferred through women that cannot otherwise be transferred through men. And women are very effective in a tactical and strategic way. And we must also note that after these attacks happened, there was almost a goading process in social media where supporters of Islamic State were saying, women have now got to do what men would otherwise not do. And in all of the propaganda that we've analyzed in the past, of which we've published 2 extensive reports looking at women in the Islamic State, women are not allowed to do pretty much anything once they reach the Islamic State that has to do with violence. So it is very much a network approach of which there are nodes. And I think the romance or the marriage factor, the strategic marriage, and the networks play into that as well, which is why it's so important when we receive a testimony from a mother to try to utilize those testimonies so that if it is the case of something like identity formation and dual identity, we then understand in multiple cases, if this was to occur again, what we can do to prevent it from happening amongst young people.
You know, Nikita, we have this tendency when we don't know the story, I don't know Sarah or her mother, to be a little judgmental. Hey, how come the mother didn't see this coming?
Yes, I think parents have a really tough time in this. I don't know the story. I don't think any of us do. But in my generation, parents, the main risk factor they had amongst their children was if a child went online when the internet had come out and a child was being groomed by a sexual predator. And it was only after multiple workshops in schools, the participation of healthcare practitioners, teachers, educating parents, that parents began to become a lot more aware of what their children were doing on the internet and were able to equip them with skills to counter the kind of sexual predators they would meet online. Now, what we're finding with the next generation is sexual predators are also being amplified by extremist predators online, people who are giving children false information, who are supplying them with biased religious interpretations, and are coming across as friends online. And so I think parents are given a hard time, and it is only through testimonies of parents who have been through this, and mothers in particular who have been through this, allowing them to talk, that we're able to understand how to prevent this from happening in the future.
Lots of reactions on the hashtag F24Debate. Saka saying this is the changing face of terrorism. They're now using women as frontline combatants. Paris, Kenya, most recently. We can add places like Nigeria. The list goes on. Of course, Leila Jacinto, strong-willed women were part of terror groups like the Badr Mannhof gang and the Red Brigades of the 1970s in Europe. We heard Dahlia mention the Palestinians.
Right. I mean, the Tamil
women are
Tigers
not just simply passive and looking for a husband.
Right. I think some of the best use of most notorious use of women were the Tamil Tigers, who used female suicide bombers. And of course, you know, if in terms of getting over security, there's nothing like females. You know, they're much easier. They don't set out alerts. I mean, one thing, you know, you mentioned this French girl Sarah, and we talked about marriage alliances. Now, in the mythology of jihad, there is the so-called ummah, there is a caliphate, and all Muslims are equal, and that's the ideal. But the reality is there are hierarchies even among equals, and the case of Sarah and what we're looking at, these marriage links, you would see that also in Al Qaeda, for instance. You know, these same women are engaged or marry men, jihadists, and you see the nexus of linking them. For instance, there was this Belgian citizen of Moroccan origin. She married a jihadist who killed the Afghan resistance hero Ahmad Shah Massoud. She subsequently married another jihadist who was killed in Pakistan. It's very similar because you take these women and you see their marital links, but they are mostly on language lines, you know, so they do have a sort of language lines.
We're gonna continue on that score, especially about connecting the dots between various attacks and looking at women when we come back in the France 24 debate.